I already broke down the 15 biggest busts in fantasy football this week, but now let's talk about the 15 biggest risers. These are the players that carried you into the semifinals and are poised to help you take home a championship. Hey, before I get to those players, let me remind you, whether your fantasy football season is over or not, it's not too late to join Underdog Fantasy. Not only are you going to get this new customer special, Matthew Stafford just needs to go higher than half a yard on Thursday Night Football, you're also going to have an opportunity to do drafts during the football playoffs, all off season long. Potential to win thousands, millions of dollars on Underdog Fantasy. Draft with us all off season. If you haven't joined yet, go to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code ENDGAME, and they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. They're just going to give you free money. You can use it on this new customer special. You can use it on some drafts. It's a great way to play fantasy football all year long. Last week, I led this video off with James Cook. This week, I'm leading the video off with James Cook because after what he did last week, I was like, hey, that's fantastic. You got to be feeling good. And then he went out and did even better. Over 200 total yards, 2 touchdowns. He's now scored at least 16 PPR points in 4 straight games. And in the 3 games since Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, has been fired, this team has committed to the running game more. And thankfully, it's James Cook. And the other nice thing you got to like, no, he doesn't get all the goal line run, but he is getting chances near the goal line. Sure, his touchdowns came from somewhat at a distance this week, but he got snaps near the goal line. He's getting incredible opportunity. He's in a great offense. He's a dynamic player. He's an explosive player. He's the exact kind of guy you want to have in fantasy right now at the running back position. If you have James Cook and you're on to your semifinals, which let's be real, if you started him in week 15, you're likely still playing in week 16. You got to be feeling great having James Cook in your lineup. Looks like he's going to smash rest of the season. You also got to be feeling great about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got at least 17 PPR points in each of the last 2 games, and he scored 3 touchdowns over that span. And unlike some head coach with a terrible mustache over in Atlanta, Dan Campbell actually knows how to use his young early draft picks like Jahmyr Gibbs and tight end Sam Laporta. And like James Cook, he's an extremely explosive player. He doesn't need 15, 20 touches. He's getting used the right way in this offense. He's getting chances to score. He's running behind one of the best offensive lines. We know this is one of the run-friendliest offenses in the NFL. Jahmyr Gibbs looking absolutely fantastic right now. No reason to think he slows down between now and the end of the season. Now, we did have a few surprises at running back this week, starting with Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, we felt pretty confident Alexander Mattison wasn't going to play after injuring his ankle in week 14, and we knew Ty Chandler would probably get the bulk of the work, but we didn't think Ty Chandler would be this good. Over 150 total yards, a touchdown, had 26 touches in this game. It makes you wonder why Alexander Mattison was touching the ball so much all year long. Ty Chandler looked so much better than Alexander Mattison has looked at any point this season. Now, if there's a downside here, unlike James Cook or Jahmyr Gibbs, who we know what their role is going to be, it's that Alexander Mattison may return, and sadly, when he does, for whatever reason, he's probably going to be the guy. It doesn't matter if he fumbles, doesn't matter if he drops passes, doesn't matter if he trips over his own feet, he'll still be the guy for some reason. But if Alexander Mattison is out again, you got to feel at least pretty good about Ty Chandler, though it's not a great spot here in week 16, but still, anybody with his explosiveness getting this kind of volume has fantasy relevance. As will any running back getting 30 touches like Devin Singletary just did in week 15. The irony here is during our start-sit shows, I said, I feel like one of these running backs is going to have a big game out of kind of nowhere this week. I just don't know which one it will be. Well, we know which one it is now. It was clearly Devin Singletary. Dameon Pierce, 1 touch in this game. It looks like the Texans finally said, okay, fine. Singletary's the better player. Let's just give him the ball. Kind of like what we've seen with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. Now, I'm sure the fact that CJ Stroud was out played into Devin Singletary getting so many touches, as did the fact that the game went into overtime. But if he's going to be the lead back in this offense, especially if CJ Stroud comes back, again, it's going to have fantasy relevance. You can't love him in week 16 against the Browns, but still, if he's going to get this many touches, he needs to be in fantasy lineups. And then, of course, we started the week with Zamir White being one of the best running backs. 17 PPR points, scored a touchdown on a week where the Raiders somehow scored 63 points. Obviously, the question marks here is Josh Jacobs going to be back or not. If he's not, we got to feel good. Zamir White will be the lead back again in week 16. The other big question mark here is, will the Raiders score 63 points again? And I don't mean this week. I mean the rest of the season. Will they even combine for 63 points? Because let's not forget, they combined for 0 the week before. They don't get to play the Chargers ever again in the fantasy season, but still, if Josh Jacobs misses week 16, you got to feel good about Zamir White as a volume running back with touchdown potential. On to wide receiver, and currently your top scoring wide receiver heading into Monday Night Football is Jordan Addison, because why not? That's right, a guy who for 5 weeks had not scored more than 10 PPR points, scored almost 30 in week 15 in the first round of your fantasy football playoffs. Unfortunately, it was on a lot of benches. We do have to ask the question, was this because Nick Mullins just likes Jordan Addison so much, or was this just a fluke? I'm going to tend to lean more towards a fluke, and maybe it was just Justin Jefferson coming back from injury, one of those type of games. But I have always said I like Jordan Addison a lot better when Justin Jefferson is on the field. I do not feel like Jordan Addison is a true number 1 wide receiver. He's a high-end complementary number 2 wide receiver. Maybe he just needed Justin Jefferson back, or maybe he just needed Nick Mullins. Either way, I guess you got to be feeling a little bit better about him going into week 16. Still risky, but at least the upside is there once again. And is the upside there once again with Chris Godwin? After doing nothing with 11 targets in week 14, he went out there and caught 10 passes for over 150 yards in week 15. Not sure what's going on the last 2 weeks. I mean, it helps when your quarterback throws for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. But for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks, they've been looking to get Chris Godwin more involved intentionally. And I guess in week 15, it certainly worked. Again, kind of like Jordan Addison. Are we buying into this fully? Is this a thing that we're going to see going forward now? Can we trust him? Or are we going to get burned kind of like earlier in the year when he had a couple nice games and then disappeared again? You probably got to find out in week 16 though, because they're playing the Jaguars at home. That's a great spot. So Chris Godwin looks like he's in a strong position to go off once again in week 16. Now, what a season it has been for Cooper Kupp. Obviously had that hamstring injury to start the year, went on IR, came back, looked phenomenal coming back, looked like the same guy we had seen, over the last year and a half, 2 years. Then suffered a little bit of a setback, then had an ankle injury, had like 5 weeks where he did almost nothing, looked like you couldn't even start him. But now back-to-back games with 25 PPR points. Maybe he's just fully healthy again. Maybe that's been the issue here. Maybe he's only been healthy for 4 games and the rest of the games not healthy. But as long as Cooper Kupp is healthy, which it seems like he is, the offense is rolling ever since he's gotten healthy, and Kyren Williams has come back. This offense has been absolutely rolling. Matthew Stafford looks great. I think Cooper Kupp at this point has to be a locked-in, no doubt, starting wide receiver for fantasy teams. So if you somehow survive the wave that has been Cooper Kupp this year and you started him in week 15, you should be feeling good heading into week 16. And if you've been riding and surviving the wave that is Rashee Rice, you should be feeling fantastic right now. He's the clear number 1 wide receiver on this offense, might even be the number 1 target on this offense. He's had 7 or more catches in 4 straight games, and he's scored 14 PPR points in 4 straight games. And over the last 2 games, he's really seen his route participation go up. And look, the Chiefs need somebody. It can't just be Travis Kelce. I mean, we're not even seeing vintage Travis Kelce right now. Rashee Rice literally is kind of saving this Chiefs offense at the moment. No other wide receiver on this offense has stepped up or is going to step up. Rashee Rice is going to be the number 1 guy from now all the way through the season, however long they go in the playoffs. He's going to have to be the guy. If you've been on that Rashee Rice wave this year, it's been a wild one, but it looks like it's finally paying off when it matters most, finally flattening out, and you can feel good about him every week going forward. And then speaking of wild rides, that's been Amari Cooper and the Browns. I mean, he's had some big games, had some terrible games, played with all sorts of quarterbacks, but it looks like maybe what he needed was just Joe Flacco. In the 2 games of Joe Flacco so far, 22 targets, 186 yards, and a touchdown. And what you really got to like here is Joe Flacco is just slinging it. Look, Joe Flacco isn't playing for his future. It's not like Joe Flacco's trying to prove to the NFL that he can play. Sure, he says he wants to play next year, but come on, is he really going to be starting for a team next year? Like, our team's that desperate? He's out there just slinging it. Yes, he's throwing interceptions, but it doesn't matter because he just keeps slinging it. And that's good for a wide receiver like Amari Cooper, who needed this kind of quarterback, somebody with an arm that could get him the ball down the field. Amari Cooper has legit been very good this year. He just doesn't have the stats because he got stuck playing a bunch of games with PJ Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He finally has a QB who can get him the ball, get that upside out of him. So once again, if you've been on the Amari Cooper roller coaster this year and you're still playing, you can finally feel good about him in your fantasy lineup. Week 15 was easily one of the strangest weeks for quarterbacks. Case in point, Jared Goff is currently your QB1 heading into Monday Night Football. Coming off a 5-touchdown game. That's right, 5 touchdowns, tying his career high. The only question marks here is, now he gets 2 straight road games. Can he keep it going on the road? But look, with the way QB is right now, so many stud QBs not producing, so many guys that are just waiver wire pickups outproducing drafted studs, you might as well just keep rolling with Jared Goff if you've got him. At least this week and the week after, he gets to play in a dome, so you don't have to worry about that. And are we going to get suckered back into Baker Mayfield? We might have to. I mean, he went into Lambeau Field, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, just lit up the Packers. After a month of looking like, well, Baker Mayfield, he kind of looked like early season Baker Mayfield again. Who knows with this guy? He's so unpredictable. He's one of these guys that can get hot for periods of time and then crash down to earth and look terrible. But there's a good chance he stays hot because, as I mentioned with Chris Godwin, he gets a home matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, an absolute pass funnel defense. Being back at home should help. So if you had to stream Baker Mayfield in week 15 and he carried you into week 16, just keep rolling with him again. Now, at tight end, I've been talking about David Njoku for a while now, but even I didn't expect him to be doing what he did the last 2 games. 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 2 games Joe Flacco has started so far. It's obvious that alongside Amari Cooper, David Njoku is one of the pass catchers Joe Flacco trusts the most. And as I said, Joe Flacco is slinging it. He's just going to keep throwing it. Whether it's to his own team or the other team, it doesn't matter. It's great for fantasy. And David Njoku gets a fantastic matchup not only this week against the Houston Texans, who are terrible against tight ends, but then the New York Jets in week 17, who think they're a great defense. But for some reason, tight ends have success against them, probably because you can't really throw to wide receivers. David Njoku is a guy that just needs to be locked into lineups from now till the end of the season. Tremendous weekly upside. And I think we got to say the same thing about Trey McBride. We were a little worried about him coming out of the bye, going up against the 49ers, Hollywood Brown back, and it did not matter. 10 catches, over 100 yards. This guy has been a target monster since Zach Ertz got hurt and then was cut. Over the last 3 games, he has 29 targets. I don't even care about the matchup anymore. This guy is 100% matchup proof. He's basically Kyler Murray's first, second, and third read in this offense. If you got Trey McBride, just lock him into your lineup and don't even think about it. Now, I don't quite feel like Hunter Henry is a set and forget tight end at this point, but you still got to feel pretty good about him. 3 touchdowns in the 2 games of Bailey Zappi so far. If the Patriots are going to score, I guess it's just going to be Hunter Henry. He even had another touchdown in this game called back on a holding. He could have had 4 touchdowns in 2 games with Bailey Zappi. Now, there are some question marks about whether he will play in Week 16. We'll have to monitor his injury status. But if he plays and he's still on your waiver wire and you're looking for a tight end, he's got to be the number 1 start this week off the waiver wire at tight end. As long as he's going to keep scoring touchdowns with Bailey Zappi, he needs to be in your fantasy lineup. And if you're still rolling through your fantasy playoffs, you need to watch our videos. We got you covered with everything you need. Who to start, who to sit, who could boom. Everything you need to win in Week 16 and get to your finals. Check it out in our playlist right here.